Hi, Winnie. Thank you for joining us on Third Culture Africans.
Hi, Zeze.
I feel like we've already done the whole episode.
I feel like we've had this conversation so many times.
Yeah, we've done this episode. I feel like we've already had our episode, so we'll try to fill in everyone in on the chat this week. We
of course
are known for having our monumental conversations about life and everything.
Yeah.
But our guest this week, for me, has become a good friend, and it was a mutual friend.
I know.
Who introduced us to each other. And perchance she thought, oh my God, how come you guys don't know each other? And you guys should, because we are both in the beauty industry.
Indeed.
In some capacity.
Yeah.
And I like to refer to you as a super connected human.
Super connected.
Yeah, you are. I think you are. I feel like there are very few ecosystems that you don't have or knowledge of or know someone in.
Okay, yes. From that perspective, yes.
You know what I mean? And so she's a woman of very vast knowledge. So I hope you guys will enjoy this episode as much as I think it's going to go, because we're going to talk about everything and anything. So Winnie is the founder of Antidote Street.
Yes.
Antidote Street, reading your bio, was born out of your frustration with not being able to find, I guess, a safe place for a woman of color with textured hair.
Yeah.
To figure out what on earth you should be buying and why.
Exactly.
And how that works for us, even in the professional environment around the salons.
Yeah.
And you've dedicated pretty much the last few years of your life trying to change that.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Pretty accurate.
Welcome to Third Culture Africans, the lifestyle podcast for dreamers, thinkers, and doers. We celebrate artistry, share stories from those brave enough to create something and succeed, listen to diverse perspectives on African success, and those shifting the needle on culture. I'm Zeze Sal, your host.
I mean, I think something that really baffles me is the fact that for the vast majority of my adult life, I pretty much didn't know how to look after my hair.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Hang on. All right, yeah. Something that pretty much baffled me is that I didn't know how to look after my hair, and the reason why I say that is because I essentially, you go through kind of like your teen life, and you're kind of like braiding your hair, putting whatever it is, using whatever it is that you're kind of like, however you were raised, right? For me, it was braiding. Yeah. Braiding your hair and not really quite understanding what the texture of your hair is.
Yes.
And soon after, I would say high school, then university, I started working in the city of London, and I just went weaves, and I would just submit myself. Yeah, I just went weaves. Okay. And I remember, oh my God, the lady that used to do my hair, she definitely didn't care about the health of my hair, because I would rock up on a Friday evening, just like today.
Yeah.
She'd take off the weave, relax it, put the thing back on, and I'm like winning. Because Saturday is still there, Sunday is still there, Monday my hair's ready to go to work. So that's what I mean. And when I eventually decided to cut my hair, I did it because, not for any kind of like significant reason. I think people often have like earth-shattering reasons, wanted to connect with myself or, whatever. I just did it because I found it fascinating, because a lot of my friends were starting to do it, and I wanted to know what would my hair look like, because I actually don't know. And I remember the first time I saw my curls, because I never really saw them because it was constantly being relaxed. I was like, oh wow, like who is that?
Yes.
And what is that?
Yes.
And when my sisters saw it, they were like, dude, like, are you from this family? Like, what's going on? I'm like, you have the same hair as I do.
Yeah.
It's not actually different.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't pink then.
It wasn't pink. It was it was definitely black.
Yeah.
But when I saw it, I just cut off the relaxed ends. I just did it straight away.
Yeah.
And
I must say it's been one of the most freeing things I've done. And I've cut my hair before.
Yeah.
But I've cut my hair in a texturized state.
Yes.
So I've cut my hair short into like a pixie cut before, but never to as drastically as I did last year. To go from like texturized to fully natural.
Yeah.
I have never done it. And then I went blonde because I thought, why not? I'm never going to do this before.
How did you feel when you went blonde?
It was incredibly freeing. I had this I'm not my hair kind of feeling. You know, I can't be defined by my hair. I am not my hair. This is not who I am, as much as society has told me. And even I've told myself that my identity or who I want the world to see is very much tied to how I rock my hair. And I didn't really see my hair as a form of expression, which a lot of other cultures use hair as expression. But for us as women of color, I think it's not the same for us as a very seldomly do you find a woman of color who is open enough to use her hair as expression. Whereas you have a lot of other cultures who are happy to do that. Whereas for us, it's almost like it is a status symbol. Yes. I think it's more about how we want to be perceived as opposed to what we're expressing.
Exactly. I think I had a very similar experience to you when I colored my hair. I started coloring my hair. It was blonde before, and then I went pink about probably 2 years ago now. And when I went blonde it was the first time I had ever put color in my hair. And I was surprised because I was thinking, you know, everybody's done this in their teenage years. They've gone purple. They've gone all kinds of crazy colors, and I've never done it. And I did that. I went blonde for the first time probably 4 years ago or something like that. And I felt similar things that you felt. And I would say I'm definitely in a place now where I'm like, I definitely want to have fun with my hair. And also for us with Antidote Street, it's kind of like this ethos of would like to give people all the information so that they can be freer with their hair. So it's like, if you know how to keep it healthy, it doesn't really matter how you want to rock it. If you want to wear weaves, if you want to color it, if you want to relax it, as long as you just know what you're doing, because then that way you're coming from a place of power as opposed to a place of I have to be this way.
And I guess there's a fear around, oh my god, is my hair going to fall off if I color it? Because we all start from a place of very little knowledge. I remember, oh my god, desperately wanting to chemically straighten my hair in whatever shape or form they would give it to me, because I have 2 older siblings and they had gotten old enough. They had gotten old enough to get their hair relaxed. And I didn't have a negative relationship with my hair. I never have, actually. So in 2005, 6, 4, I rocked a big afro. But I remember desperately wanting that feeling of straight hair. And finally getting it. And finding that it didn't look like the girl on the Just For Me packet.
Yes, the Just For Me packet. I remember that.
It wasn't as full.
I remember that.
The bubbles
it wasn't
just
as bouncy.
No, the bubbles just were flat on my head.
But did you? I don't know whether you saw that American kids had that. Was it just the way they were blow drying our hair?
I think our hair was perhaps. At the time, I don't think the professionals who were doing our hair were professionals.
No, they probably weren't.
And I think it was over-processed hair, basically.
Probably.
So our hair as a starting point and I guess for most women of color, and I guess for most people in developing countries, who, if you look at the quality of the products we had, even... for our hair care, it wasn't anything.
I think I can't think of any product I was using that I was like, one, I understand what that product does, or that product gave me a style that was desirable in any way. I'll often have, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that you couldn't relax your hair until you hit a certain age. Mine was relaxed from the age of before, or
Oh,
certainly
wow.
maybe not relaxed, certainly like the hot comb, like
Yeah.
chemically not
Heat,
heat
yeah.
straightened.
Oh, wow.
Because I was going to be a little bride at a wedding.
So that was your first experience.
That was my first experience.
Okay.
And it kind of just carried on
From there. Once you tasted the other side of straight hair,
basically it just kind of like carried on from there, which is just so interesting. And then to your point around having either over processed hair or having people who are not really professionals work on your hair, I remember many years later I was doing an internship at IBM many moons ago. I remember this guy. He was like, Winnie, why doesn't your hair move? Okay, thankfully I didn't fancy him, because I probably would have gone like
oh my God, I'm dead.
I probably would have wanted the floor to open up and eat me up in an instant. I think I probably had something like super witty to reply to.
I think that was like, I guess as I got older, the measure of a good hairdresser and a good treatment or a good visit to the hairdresser was the wind would blow and your hair would move.
Yeah, and then it would return hopefully back in place, as opposed to it would move and then it would be stuck wherever.
Yeah. So Antidote Street, born out of what sounds like your, and I guess for a lot of women of color, our journeys with our hair.
Yeah.
And you decided to make a tech business out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, with Antidote Street, there was certainly the piece that came from frustration of not having the right knowledge or not having the right access to good quality products, right? But then the other part of it is just also realizing that, hang on a second, I'm engaging with forward-thinking products in every facet of my life, right? I'm using things like Netflix, Uber, Deliveroo, etc., right? Products of that ilk. Digitally native, mobile first, amazing. But why is it that when it came to my beauty, I had to suddenly go to like a dodgy shop in the back of the corner of God knows where to pick up a garish looking top to put on my hair? There was something that just wasn't working. And it's kind of like this whole idea that, the experience that we've had, or in some scenarios continue to have as women of color, is woefully lacking. And it's, I think of what we do in Antidote Street is like arming people with the right product, but also giving an excellent experience in terms of the way they engage, and really challenging the status quo when it comes to the experience that people are used to.
Yeah, and as a customer myself, I can say that definitely exists. The ability to find, I remember in the early days where they had those hair forums.
Yes.
And they would talk about all these products, the American girls who had all these luscious hairs, and they'll tell you about their texture, and you'll spend hours trying to figure out, am I 4B? Am I 4C? What am I? And you couldn't get hold of those products unless you had someone in the US that would readily send you those products. But you guys provide a bridge for that need.
Yes, we do. But I think that even thinking about it in terms of the evolution that we've seen in the industry is, for instance, in America, the FDA does not have a stringent a law as to ingredients that are banned, etc., whereas EU's ingredients are much more stringent. So you have like a wider list of ingredients that, for instance, are banned in the EU. So what's exciting is like we curate the products and the brands that are on the site, making sure that they've gone through the relevant testing. Then we go a step further to test them with multiple kind of like textures so we can actually give people the right advice. So I feel like it's flipped, right? So there was a time when we used to kind of seek after all the products from the US, but I think the consumer is definitely a lot more savvy and knowledgeable now, whereby it's not an automatic kind of like, let's head to the products that are coming from the States. It's sort of like, what is going to do what I need it to do? And by the same token, you've also seen British brands or British born brands really create phenomenal products, both in terms of excellent formulation, but also excellent packaging, the full experience, when I don't know about you. I think you're quite similar. Like, I love my bath. I love my bubble bath. I just like...
I'm a product junkie.
Exactly.
I guess I'm in the right line of work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I love, like, I mean, this New Year, what I did for New Year's Eve, I basically had a lovely bath.
Yeah.
Had a beautiful glass of wine. Incense was burning. I was just like, and my friend always talks about how I like, kind of like, my friend came and she's like, Winnie, like, you just like cream your body. Like, like it's a ritual or something. So I love all that stuff. And, you know, when you see products that are, you know, that just fit into that.
But there's something beautiful about the ritual of hair, right? So I have fun memories. Again, for some people it could have been traumatic, but for me, Sundays were our hair days. So, because Saturdays we swam, and then Sundays we did our hair to have it done for the week. And I have memories of my mum with the blow dryer and sulfur 8 and Head and Shoulders shampoo.
God, yes.
And that I would say was the beginning of the ritual of hair. For me, but you touched earlier on early Winnie. Yes. So you are born in Aba, Nigeria.
Yes, I am.
Which is known for producing sort of most of Nigeria's entrepreneurs come from there. So there's something in the DNA.
There's definitely something there.
But you started your career in management consultancy at one of the biggest consultancy firms.
Yeah.
Why?
I think...
were you ever going to become an entrepreneur? Because someone from Abbas saying they're going to become an entrepreneur doing business, I don't think has the same... I think for you guys, because it's so much more acceptable in your culture that... it wouldn't ring the same or true as some of our other guests where the aspiration is lawyer, doctor, accountant, etc.
Well, I would say that that's definitely different because I'm the only person in my family that's doing what I'm doing. And that was definitely... I look at Abba as... you know, I've really kind of learned so much about that city because one, it was the city my parents chose to settle in after the war. And whenever I visit,
this is the Biafran War.
Yeah, the Biafran War.
Okay.
And whenever I visit and I spend ages talking to my dad and he tells me things and he takes me to like the first ever house they lived in, like it just has so much significance for me. And I'm learning a lot about this city. It's a city of artisans. You have a high number of people who are making things with their hands and it's amazing. And then you also have the businessman. Like there's the archetype Abba businessman. But I wouldn't say that our parents definitely didn't raise us up as a kind of like almost like this is a DNA thing. I don't think actually running businesses, certainly from my dad's perspective, he didn't look at it as a prestigious enough thing to do.
That's so interesting. Considering that like the perception as a non-Abba Nigerian is that perhaps in your culture, it is so much, it's, well, at the time, and hopefully, I guess now we're in a different age where it's becoming more respected.
Yeah.
But you guys were probably further along the curve than the rest of the country.
I think my dad is, like, he had this thing about, like, so I come from a family of 7, and my siblings have all done things like, you know, there's an architect in the family, an engineer in the family, an accountant in the family.
So they took all the jobs.
They took all the jobs. It was really hard for me, actually. So you know what's really fascinating? As a child, I used to love painting and drawing. I remember my mom saying to me, hey, are you sure you don't want to take a painting course like when I was picking my subjects in secondary school? And I was like, no, I'm not. And to be honest, I chose to do something in the field of computing because, to be quite frank, everything was chosen in the family, as you pointed out.
No, but like I guess in a family of 7, once you have a doctor, you have an accountant, you have a lawyer, you have an architect.
What else?
What's
what
left?
Else is there? And you've got to bear in mind as well. I don't know whether you had that experience growing up. There was this split, this divide between are you an arts or are you a science person?
Oh, yeah.
And then the people who are arts really is not really arts. It doesn't mean painting or you know, whatever, or design. Arts is like sort of architecture and law. Yeah. I don't know, social sciences.
So social sciences,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then if you're kind of like science, you're like the doctors, the
maths and
exactly,
physics
all
and
of that
things
stuff.
like that. Yeah.
So I chose to do something in the computing space, and I think there's probably an element of that. Like my dad would be like, he'll call each one of us, oh yeah, this one is studying this and this one is studying that, and I love that. I love to be able to be like, yeah, I'm studying computer science, and it made my dad proud.
Yeah.
So I think that I think that there was certain, I wouldn't say I was pressured into studying what I studied in university.
It's just what was left.
I think, one, it was what was left in the limited pool of options that I had. But I think that there was probably some elements of, well, if everybody's gonna do this, I better do this.
Yeah.
But I think that what was fascinating though in my choice was, I moved to do my A-levels. I did my A-levels in Birmingham, and I remember having this amazing business studies teacher. Like, she was so good. She organized lots of trips for us. Like, we went to Disneyland, but somehow she managed to get them to give us like some sort of a tutorial on the business behind Disney.
Yeah.
Like, she did things like that was amazing and really brought it to life for me. And that was the first time that I was like, oh wow, I'm really enjoying this, and I would love to have an element of that in my degree. So I ended up doing a fusion between business and technology.
So you knew that early on?
I just knew I liked it. I didn't know. All I knew was, shout out to Mrs. Rachel Boyce, who taught business studies.
Mrs. Rachel Boyce. Shout out Mrs. Rachel Boyce.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because, I don't think I even remember names of my other teachers, but I remember her name because she clearly helped me see something. But I wouldn't say that the decision was one that was necessarily made with so much, oh my God, I know now. All I know is I really enjoy this, and I'd love to have an element of this continue in my degree.
Yes.
And then that was like an interesting tug of war between my dad and I, because it was like, I thought it was computer science.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's still.
Yeah, but business. But business. Yeah.
It's still but business. So yeah, that was kind of like the journey to doing that. And it sort of followed through. Like when my course was like a 3-year course, but I went out and I got, after my second year, I got an industrial placement year. To work at IBM, and I basically went back to university, and I said to the uni, I was like, hey guys, I know it's a 3-year course, but I've got this great job for 1 year.
Yes.
I'd like to go do it. And they were like, by all means, go do it. So I spent a year working as a software tester at IBM.
Oh, cool.
And
I did the same. I worked for British Telecom.
Well,
yeah.
there you go.
But I purposely picked my course to have an industrial year.
What did you study?
Informatics.
So same.
It was all that was left. They wanted engineers, and I couldn't see myself doing an engineering degree. I'd seen both my older siblings do engineering degrees, and I just couldn't see myself
doing that.
An engineering degree.
Yeah.
And so it was somewhere between software engineering and computer science. And that's how I literally explained it to my dad.
Yeah.
Once he heard there was engineering in there somewhere,
he was like,
it's okay, I can pay for this. You know? But if that word wasn't in there, I don't think I would have had the same response.
Yeah.
And then you go into management consultancy.
I did.
But then you pivot into e-commerce. Yes. So you've worked for Net-a-Porter, ASOS, LVMH.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah.
I had a great year. It wasn't 1 year, it was more than a year. It was half a decade of management consulting. But I was getting to the point where, two things were happening. I remember my brother, he was setting up his architectural practice at the time, and he would get so excited, right? Like, we'll meet and he would sketch out like on a tissue paper something that he's working on, and I got so excited by his ability to start something from beginning to end, and have a physical product. And I think in consulting sometimes, you were going from business to business, and you were making an impact in these businesses, but they were short-term projects. And I certainly started, maybe it's the creativity itch, was starting to kind of like, starting to feel restless, and I certainly wanted to move, but I didn't just want to move to another consultancy. practice, because a lot of my friends were doing that. They were getting monumental jumps in their salary. And I remember two of my friends, and we were kind of like casually window shopping online. And we're like, well, what if we worked in these places? What if we?
But at the time, these were young businesses.
These were young businesses.
They were startups.
Exactly. They were startups.
Because you did Net-a-Porter first.
I did Net-a-Porter first, and then I moved on to ASOS afterwards. And I kind of took on the what if we, and I made it a personal thing. I was like, well, what if I? Because I love fashion.
Yeah.
And I love that this is an exciting new business model that's kicking off. And why don't I take my skills and then be somewhere that kind of gives me everything I'm looking for, the creativity.
Was this at the beginning when the headlines start to come into mainstream about the success of the brand and things like that?
Yes. Okay. I'll definitely say so. So it wasn't like employee number 10. It had definitely become a lot bigger. I had because I recently came across like an email I sent to my dad, and I was trying to explain to him why I was leaving Ernst & Young to go to Net-a-Porter,
which he had never heard of.
He was just like, this is not online
online shop.
The trajectory involved JP, Goldman, that was what everybody was doing. It's either you're going to go down the kind of Accenture, McKinsey route, or, investment banks. So I found this email I sent him, and I was kind of like, well, it's Net-a-Porter, it's part of Richemont, and Richemont is the third largest luxury group in the world. This is how much they're worth. So they had already,
Richemont had bought in already at the time. Okay.
This is how much they're worth, blah, 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 blah. So I literally gave him like bullet points so that he could understand what was going on. Yeah. And he was like, okay, cool. But I remember having to do that. And they were definitely at a point where, they were bigger. Yeah. And I suppose that maybe that contributed to my ability to make that pivot as well, because they were in a stage where my skill set was needed. So I did that, and it was absolutely amazing for me. It was like a 360-degree view of e-commerce. But personally, I would say I was just in heaven, just being around clothes, being around fashion, being around beauty. It was just great.
And then from that to ASOS.
Yes.
At a similar place in the company's growth. Yeah. Where I guess Net-a-Porter is now IPO'd. Yeah. Because you were there through the IPO.
No, not Net-a-Porter's IPO. Net-a-Porter actually never IPO'd because it got bought out by or merged with Yoox. Yeah. And then I moved on to ASOS. And ASOS was... I look at Net-a-Porter as my 360-degree e-commerce view. Yeah. And then I look at ASOS as my deep tech. Like, Toto, we're not in Kansas no more. It's like proper hardcore technology, and I learned so much. So like at ASOS, the sort of things I was delivering was recommendations, machine learning, technology products that, they're incredibly forward thinking. So that was just, having the two was just amazing, because they're like similar companies at their core. One is luxury, one is not. But the experience for me was definitely,
I've come to realize, especially with the podcast, that no experience is wasted. And hearing of your past experience and the business that you have today, which has an incredible cool factor, because you guys don't just do regular press. You guys do dazed. For every guest, I respect immensely what they do, and I speak very highly of your business. But I always see what you're able to achieve as even more daring or groundbreaking, because we're all third culture kids who are African. And as a result of our personal endeavors with having a vision and wanting to execute that, we are creating a perspective in people's eyes globally around our culture, around our ecosystem, around our achievements, around things to do with us, pretty much. Yeah. And you guys do it a little differently. So,
thank you.
No, but you do. And I say you guys, you do it a little
but
differently.
So do you, actually.
But it's unique. It's unique in its own way, right? Like, Malay's never been featured in Dazed.
But I've had
other
equally
things. I've had other things.
Groundbreaking things.
Yeah, but Dazed is like cool. Like, Dazed is cool kids personified, right? So you've got Dazed, and then, there's Vogue, there's Refining 21, Harper's, and Cosmo, sort of your glossies and your luxury glossies that we love. But this is in conversation about textured hair, women of color, black hair, whatever politically correct term it is today. But it's about something that historically we wouldn't see in our magazines. Yeah. And even if we saw it, it wasn't in the same way that Antidote Street presents it. Yeah. So, you guys did something incredibly earth-shattering, which was you put out this salon manifesto, and you pretty much called the whole industry to task publicly in Vogue.
I look at the manifesto as a collaborative effort.
Okay, before I think I'm speaking from a place of knowledge. So
right, okay.
Yeah, can you let our listeners know, like, what is this?
Let me
manifesto
explain.
needs to be explained.
Let me explain. With Antidote Street, we do lots and lots of research with our customer base.
Yes, this is your tech experience, which you've touched on.
This is lots of research, lots of data, design sprints, etc. Constantly trying to get to the bottom of what is your experience both online and offline. I often say I'm interested in both.
And I guess we're always disgruntled by our experience, right?
Exactly.
The wait times in a salon.
Exactly.
The lack of professionalism with the professionals.
Exactly. And salons just kept coming up, and we're like, well, let's have a conversation about that, right? So for us, leading it as Antidote Street, we're really an independent facilitator. Kind of like, just like as a consultant, you might come into a business as an independent person, which means you can have a conversation from both sides. And we were coming, sharing feedback from our customers, and we invited, a number of leading salons in London to say, let's have this conversation. Let's actually try and understand what is happening in the industry. And off the back of that, we learned from, like stylist Sabrina Kidd, who talked about her entire experience in the industry from probably late 80s, early 90s. And she was coming from a place of trying to understand whether anything had actually changed in the industry. She started her career at a point where she could barely even find anyone to get her hair done. And she was trying to see whether anything had changed. And it was fascinating just hearing the conversations in the room. And the purpose of that was for us to say, okay, together, let's come up with what we believe this experience needs to be, or certainly a starting point that can then evolve as more salons get on board, as we get feedback from more stakeholders. That's essentially what it is. So on our site right now, there's a 5-point manifesto that covers all of those points that customers tend to feedback about. So things like timeliness, you respect my time, I respect yours. Going back to the science of hair care. Like, I like to think that if the manifesto existed, I wouldn't have been in a scenario whereby I'll go to a hairdresser and they would relax my hair, put a weave on. You know what I mean? Because essentially they're putting like, Are you putting the
health of my hair first?
Exactly. Are you able, like one of the stylists, Amazing Dion, she basically was like, for instance, Winnie, I would never color your hair pink if it was relaxed.
Yeah.
So thinking about what should you expect from your hairdresser? Yeah. There'll be some things you don't know, but oh no, you can't do this, and here's the reason why. Yeah. So the manifesto is really touching on what are those key points where we can say together, let's hold ourselves accountable to the service that we're putting forward. And that was also coming from a place of the buck stops with us now. I feel like we're in such an exciting time where there's so many people who are creating amazing businesses that are challenging the status quo. So it's sort of like, we can't wait for anybody else to do it. Let's all come together and make a stronger impact and actually create the industry that we want to see. It's like hairdressing has always been kind of like a stronghold, I would say, in the Afro-Caribbean community. There are lots of them around. But I often think, but why don't we have maybe like a chain that, over time, how do we come together and actually create something that is substantial here and sustainable?
And that has longevity.
Exactly. Longevity is a good word. I like that.
We have, between ourselves, constantly challenged the thought around why not us? Yeah. And in certain spaces, I think with the manifesto and being able to challenge the status quo, and it seems to be a running thread with every guest, that our businesses are not just businesses. Our businesses have purpose and are essentially trying to create a shift in our culture as we know it. A shift for our generation, the generation after, whoever's listening, etc. And for me, I wanted to be able to document that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to share that with other people, because these are conversations that we have offline often amongst friends, amongst fellow entrepreneurs, and being plugged into that ecosystem in some way, shape or form. I wanted to be able to have a place where people could tune in and tap into that depth, tap into the ability to see the world differently, tap into the experiences. And what's interesting is, as third culture kids, we've had the benefit of seeing the world a lot bigger than what we thought. And we have context, having parents who are from where they are, either were immigrants or gave us the opportunity to be immigrants and have the exposure into the world and then forge our own paths as best as possible. Because to some extent, yes, our early days are formed by our parents' wishes, but we evolve into our own people and start to find purpose in what we want to do career-wise. I say that because when you look at your career in Antidote Street, whether it's the features and books that are actually having specific conversations, or what you've done even in the corporate world with bringing up diversity, with being able to, within Net-a-Porter or ASOS, internally start to create those conversations.
Yeah.
Did you know this about yourself, that you always wanted to be impactful in that way?
I don't know, like...
Oh, that was a really long way of explaining that too, but
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I'd never even thought about that the way you've just put it, because now thinking about it, right from IBM, I was doing stuff like going into schools, speaking to kids about their career, or certainly sharing my experience in some shape or capacity, perhaps unconsciously, because I think that sometimes you have these things in your personality. But I would say I started to have those conscious thoughts probably around the time of Net-a-Porter. And I remember saying to a friend, I want the work of my hands to count. And I often think about it now. I think about it all the time. I think about impact. I think about purpose. I think about how am I making a difference with what it is that I'm doing. And your point is absolutely correct. They're not just businesses. There's something else that's happening.
Yeah. And it's definitely not for the money.
Yeah, there's absolutely something else that's happening that is profound in its own way. Because when I think about the sort of team I want to build, when I think about ownership, when I think about, like, it takes on a completely different form. It's no longer just the tech business. It's looking at who's going to be in this team. What's it going to look like in
We
X
have this
years?
conversation often about teams and stuff and building out the vision.
Yeah, but then you start to think about, like, I mean, even just to go back briefly to the manifesto, because it wasn't just the customers feel this. We also wanted to hear from stylists and salon stylists. And then you start to hear that actually hairdressing schools, like either there's a separate module for Afro hair.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Or in order to do, either it's an elective that you have to do. I've heard several versions of this story. Sometimes it's a different elective, so it's not part of the core curriculum. So you have to elect to do it, or you have to pay a little bit extra to have to do it. So when you start to kind of unravel, you start to think, well, how do we have longevity, as you say, when actually there's no pipeline for the talent? Right? And when you think about the fact that these salons are running small businesses, maybe it's one salon at a time, and they have a family and they have this, it's incredibly difficult to do all of those things and give a great service at the same time. And then when you then start to think about longevity from another perspective, well, who are the people that I'm hiring? What is their skill set? It's not to say that they ought to be people of color. They might be, they might not be, but you start to just think in a broader, more expansive way around experience, who gets to have experience and who doesn't. And how that equation can be changed.
Tackling the industry on all fronts. No, but you are tackling it on all fronts. You're having a consumer conversation, which is, hey, let me help you find the best products for your hair and your needs. And you're saying, hey, stylists, can we all get on the same page? Because we need to think of our service to the customers as a whole. And then recently, you've now launched Amara, which is, actually, I'm jumping. Pre-Amara, you did the Hair Lab, which was...
the Hair Lab.
an incredible pop-up concept. And you took, what are they called? Those vans?
Airstream vans.
You literally took an Airstream van to locations around
London.
Yes.
4 locations around London. So converted an Airstream. We popped up in Covent Garden, in Brixton.
I had major business crush with that move. I thought
we should do a duo one next time.
Yeah, I thought, Winnie's done it again.
We should do a duo one.
I was like, Winnie and her coolness has done it again. You know?
We should definitely do a duo one. But I definitely will partner to do that because it was operationally such a pain.
Yeah, I ran a retail store for 2.5 years.
Exactly.
I'm not,
Exactly.
Even a trade show is hard work for me nowadays.
Exactly. And your trade shows are infamously beautiful.
Thank you. But a trade show is hard work.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
I think the last trade show I did was Stylist Live.
Yeah.
And after that, I thought, this is work.
Yeah. This
is work.
It is.
Because your go for such a vast number of people, for such a vast number of days, that at the end you need a holiday.
Honestly, I can 100% relate. So
after
the hair lab,
yeah.
So the hair lab started with, I thought of this concept and I was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if? And then I obsessed over it for I think I thought about it November 2018, and somehow we launched it in August 2019.
Nice.
And we popped up
13 months incubation.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah, popped up in 4 different locations. Again, it's so fascinating.
But the purpose was to what exactly?
The purpose was to meet our customers at their point of need, provide them with personalized services. So in the pop-up, we had a mixture of trichologists who were actually scanning the scalp, scanning the hair, providing product recommendations to people. And then we also had other hair care services, a braid bar, a trim bar, a curl bar, all in one space.
So it was like your dream mobile salon, basically.
It literally was a physical manifestation of everything that we believe with Antidote Street. It was a next gen, what does the future
of our hair care look like?
And that was what we were trying to achieve. It didn't make sense for it to just be in one place. I definitely wanted it to move around. So we had great locations that I fought really hard to get, because I remember actually trying to secure some spaces in Central. I was told, well, why won't you go to a place that's
more ethnically dense,
more ethnic? And my argument was, well, these people who you're referring to as ethnic, you do realize that they work in the city of London.
Yeah.
They interact in these spaces. So why shouldn't they access their beauty services in those spaces? And true to form, Covent Garden was so busy for us because everybody was stopping by, going to work, and they were like, we need to go in there.
Yeah.
We need to check it out. And then they were doubly surprised when they saw that it was for them.
Yes.
That was just I can't believe this is for us.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it was kind of I can't believe this is for us, with both elation and also shock. And when I reflected weeks after, and when I thought about the shock, it also hit me that, okay, we're just not used to having this level of quality of service. So when we do see it, there's an element of shock that comes with it, even though we enjoy it. And that was the hair lab, popped up in lots of different places.
Yeah.
And it ran for 8 days.
Yeah.
And I remember actually when I was thinking about it originally, I wanted it to run for a month.
Oh, goodness. You're insane.
But 8 days killed me.
8 days.
8 days killed me. The generator broke down.
Oh,
and
God.
thankfully I had my friend who, you see, this is what third culture kids do, right? When you've had contextual experience of what it means to live in another place, or maybe even run a business in another place, like Nigeria, you instantly know what to do when a generator breaks down.
Oh, yeah.
Because instantly she was like, I know you need diesel, not this. And she just made it happen like that.
And it was back up and running. Fantastic.
And one of my friends that ran a fashion label in Lagos also told me that, Winnie, when I started this, I thought I was running a fashion company, but she was like, I am queen of operations, okay? You want to know generators, come to me. I will help you.
Call me.
So,
amazing.
So I think that it's amazing. There's definitely something about having that contextual experience, which, in this particular scenario, that's a skill. If I'm going to run a business in Nigeria, I'll probably think of this as a skill from someone I'm hiring.
But I think we tend to negate those skills at times. Now, you do that. And then in the same year, you decide that you're going to partner and start your own fashion label.
Yes.
Which is tugs at one of your passions. I think you have a general passion for art, and you decided that this was going to be your next venture, alongside trying to change the hair care industry for textured hair. And an ode to, I guess, post-colonial era was your choice. Was that intentional?
And Verve, which is our fashion label, that we had done like the latest collection, which looked at Mbari, which was a post-colonial movement. It was just collection number 2. The way we think about it is 3 could be, I don't know, some other source of inspiration, but it just so happened that as we're looking at old family albums, and we're often struck by when you'd see a picture of our parents, we will often see our mom kind of like nicely poised, how do I put it? Our moms always look nicely poised, and our dads just look like, with an air of arrogance in there. And I think that came from this idea that women have to be always perfectly put together or perfectly behave.
I think I call it black vintage glamour.
Yes.
And that's actually one of the reasons why each episode cover art is in black and white.
Ah, amazing.
Because like you, we both have a keen appreciation for art.
Exactly.
And African contemporary art and photography, etc. And I do quite nostalgically, and again, if nostalgia is the right word, look at that period in time as being magical.
Yeah. When we delve deeper into what was happening in that time, call it the global 60s, you had artists, writers gravitating towards Ibadan in Nigeria. And it was almost much like you'd have a Parisian salon where the Hemingways, the Baldwins congregated. You had a similar thing happening in Ibadan at the same time. And what was fascinating is that a lot of the artists that went through that, fella did his first debut there. Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, Christopher Kubo, like all of those guys have gone on to become, I would say, such leading figures in their space.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure that that's a.
I think they defined post-colonial Nigeria for sure.
Absolutely did, but you don't hear enough about the women who would have been involved in that movement. So that was kind of like a point of departure for us for the collection with and Verve. It's like, who are the women who might have been involved in this space? What did they do? What did they wear? Who are they? How do we get access to them? And in doing that, it touched on like documentation and how we're documenting culture, where you find information, where you don't find information.
Exactly.
During that period.
Shout out Third Culture Africans.
I know. During that period, they actually published Black Orpheus magazines.
Yes.
And they were these amazing journals that had contributors, Langston Hughes from America, like Caribbean thought leaders. It was a widely read, amazing journal. But it's difficult to get your hands on these. So I know you interviewed Ayo of Taffeta.
Yeah.
So Ayo was amazing because he let us borrow his copies.
Yeah. If you haven't heard that episode, I think it's a great episode to check out, because he's a great student and also a mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
And he actually is a student of the culture.
He is. He knows so much, and we always have the most amazing conversations. We actually partnered for our presentation at British Fashion Council, because we partnered with Taffeta Gallery, because he provided us with the works of the artists from that era.
Nice.
But I mean,
how was showing at London Fashion Week though?
Oh my gosh.
Because that's not something everyone gets to do.
We were selected to do the Discovery Lab, which was literally just perfect for Eben and I, because, in starting at Verve, we always wanted to sing to the beat of our own drums. We always wanted to tell a story, a deeper story. And the Discovery Lab is sort of this experimental showcase that blends together, I would say, fashion, art, performance. So we were able to bring together, basically show the collection for the first time, but with an art installation and a film installation at the same time. Yeah,
it was an experience.
What was amazing for us was seeing everybody who attended just they were just there. They just stuck around. They just
Yeah.
were making conversation with everybody else. It wasn't kind of like your typical, ooh, we're at a fashion show. So
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like it was just
Yeah.
a warm, vibrant space.
But I think that's what you put out,
And,
right? Like
yeah.
your cool factor. I think
I don't know if I'm gonna call that cool.
Yeah, but
I'm so uncool.
maybe to you, but I think to the wider audience, you are particularly cool and you've done a lot of cool things. And through all this, I want to say this woman is incredibly amazing. And if anyone deserves the works of their hands to be supported, I think you are one of those people, because through such an incredible time, you wake up and show up every day, have come on the podcast and are still out there serving your customers and still creating and still pushing forward for the culture. So as a general, hey guys, check out Anverve, check out Antidote Street, check out anything that Winnie's doing is for sure something that I think our listeners should really try and follow. You're not on social. I think you should be, because you have a personality that lends itself so easily to that. I think watching as closely as I've been privileged to your journey has been incredible. And I hope for a young woman out there who, from a customer perspective, doesn't know what to do with her hair or is at a point of frustration or is looking for knowledge, what would you say to them?
Well, if they're looking for knowledge, thankfully, we're providing that on Antidote Street. Love that plug. But I would say that part of this whole thing is when you talked about the magazines, about how the way we consumed those magazines, it was from a different perspective. I recently was going through my stack of Vogue magazines and I was like the really old ones.
You posted some of your thoughts.
Oh my
on that.
God. I was just so surprised by what I was consuming at such a young age.
Yeah.
And fashion is great, but I think with my eyes now, I can see that actually there was zero representation. So I certainly wasn't seeing myself.
No.
And that can have all sorts of impact on a person. I can't remember who it was that said, if you don't see yourself in art, in literature, in all of these different spaces, it's almost as if you don't exist.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm really conscious of that. So when you then take all of that's happening, I would say, in the media, and then you merge it with this idea of beauty and how people can stay true to whoever it is that they are. I think it's really, really important to encourage young women to embrace themselves as fully as they can, even as they explore their hair journey. That means really just learning your hair as it is, because it's amazing just as it is. Not wishing it was a different texture.
Yes.
Not wishing it was like, because I remember, like, even when, you know, a number of my friends were going natural, as it were. Yeah. They were thinking it was going to become this big, like, spirals, a bit like
full of curls.
A bit like full of curls. But, you know, for some people it's not. And it doesn't work out that way. And that's not to say that, I think also the industry has a thing of overtly celebrating, overtly is not the word, you know, celebrating the looser curls. And I think it should be, we should celebrate.
But we aspire to that,
everyone. But I don't think we should. You know, there's so many beauty in so many different forms. Like, I would see, like, really beautiful tight curls, and it's got a particular density to it. Yeah. And you can mold beautiful shapes and sculptures with it that you can't do with looser curl patterns.
The power of shrinkage.
I know. And the thing is, like, you know, shrinkage gets such a bad rap, but it's actually, your hair's healthy when it's shrinking. And the fact that it can be shrunken in one state and you can do a particular style and it's long again is just so freaking magical. So I just think for someone who's young, actually not necessarily young, at any point in their journey, to just work with it, understand it, and just amplify rather than try to change or wish that it was something else, because it's pretty damn amazing the way it is.
Fabulous. And so where do they find you, Antidote Street? Can you let our guests know?
Thank you. So we're on antidotestreet.com and our Instagram is @antidotestreet.
Great. And this will be in the show notes so you can get that information. Well, Winnie, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Third Culture Africans. I've had a hoot, and I hope our listeners have too.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I'm excited to hear everybody else on Third Culture Africans. I think this is such an inspired podcast. So thanks for creating it, and thanks again for everything that you do with Malay, and also continue to be an inspiration to all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, guys. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Yay!
Thank you for listening to this episode of Third Culture Africans, the Lifestyle Podcast. We would love to hear from you. So please find us on Facebook or Instagram at Third Culture Africans and leave us a comment. A review goes a long way in getting our show noticed. So please leave us one if you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you next time.